Now, normally on this channel, we talk about football boots. Why does this guy call them football boots? Does he not see the name of his own channel? Thanks for that, I hadn't noticed. But instead of talking about football boots, I want to talk about the game that we actually need the football boots for, and that game is football. Or soccer, but we're not having that argument today. Along with being fascinated by football boots, I've also done my fair share of playing as well as coaching, and at this point I think it's safe to say that I'm kind of washed up as a footballer. I still enjoy playing, but definitely don't plan on going anywhere in terms of pursuing a career. But that's a story that I told in a previous video. For those that are curious about that, I'll leave a little pop-up on screen. Either way, as kind of a different idea for the channel, a little bit of a change of pace, I figured it would be interesting for me to share some of the things that I've learned and some advice that I have to improve yourself as a footballer, whether you're still pursuing a football career or just playing for fun. And maybe this sounds crazy to say, because I think that when people are trying to improve at any sport that is skill-based, football included, the best way to do that is by way of practice. And that is 100% true. But at the same time, through my years of playing and the limited amounts of coaching that I've done, I feel like there are certain things that once pointed out, without any practice at all, will instantly make you a better player. So with that in mind, I want to share the 5 tips that I have to make yourself a better footballer. Like I said, it's something a little bit different for the channel, so if you do end up enjoying this video and want to see more videos like it, don't forget to support this one with a like. And if you are new here watching for the first time and don't want to miss out on weekly content on everything football boots, perhaps more content like this as well, make sure you hit that subscribe button. Now, the first piece of advice that I have isn't really a skill, because everybody watching this video can do this right now without having practiced it, but it is a bit of a habit, and it's a simple shoulder check. Literally looking over your shoulder in either direction so you know what's behind you. And this is a piece of advice that applies to every single position, although I will say that if you're a goalkeeper and you're constantly having to look over your shoulder, chances are you're not a very good goalkeeper, but that's besides the point. I think we have to look at the game as a series of decisions that need to be made, not just by yourself, but everybody on your team. If you can constantly make good decisions, you're probably going to be a better player. And if your entire team can constantly make good decisions, you're probably going to have a better result as a unit. So, how do you make a better decision? I'm sure we've all heard a coach say that when you're receiving a pass, you should already have an idea of what you're going to do before that pass gets to you. Okay, that sounds great, but how do you do that? Well, the best way to figure out what you're going to do before getting the ball is to have as much information as possible. And the best way to give yourself information is to have very good spatial awareness. This is what separates an amateur player from a professional player. An amateur player is looking straight ahead. They almost have blinders on themselves like a horse, where they only see what's happening directly in front of them. They're not aware of what's happening to the side, and they're certainly not aware of what's happening behind them, where an elite player not only knows what's happening in front of them, they know what's happening to the side, and they know what's happening behind them. So when they're receiving a pass from a player and they got a defender on their back, they know exactly which way to turn or where to make their touch to get away from that defender, to give themselves a little bit more time, to give themselves a little bit more space to make the right decision. And a great example of this would be watching a football match on TV, where as a viewer, you have this unique kind of top-down perspective where without turning your head, you're just watching the screen, you're getting all of the information of where all of the players are. So you get these instances where a ball gets played into the striker who has his back facing the goal, and he seemingly makes the wrong decision, where if he just turned to the right and made a simple pass, there'd be a really great scoring opportunity. But even at the professional level, there is going to be situations where they're not aware of their entire surroundings. So even though he didn't necessarily make a bad decision, he didn't make the best possible decision. And you have to consider perspective here. As a player, you have to try and take in as much information as possible at all times. The more information that you have, the more you are putting yourself in a situation to make the best possible decision. When you play FIFA and you're just trying to keep possession, it's easy to do because you can see all of the players. You have all of the information. So why not, when you're actually playing yourself, do your best to constantly be looking around, including what's happening behind you, especially before receiving a pass, so you have as much information as possible to make the best possible decision, perhaps even give yourself a scoring chance. The more aware you are of how much time and space you have, the better off you're going to be as a player. My next piece of advice is more skill-based, and this is something that growing up especially, I wish I would have done more of, but I was more fixated on doing tricks than actually learning the fundamentals of just basic juggling. And that's not me saying that you shouldn't practice any juggling tricks, but I think that just simple, straightforward juggling, left foot, right foot, left foot, right foot, left foot, right foot, while it's not the most exciting thing in the world, there's a reason why you still see elite professional footballers doing this in every single training session, in every single warm-up, because I think that juggling as a skill teaches you so many things without you even realizing it. If you're not a beginner, juggling shouldn't be a difficult skill, but that's kind of the point. When you're juggling, it's teaching you touch, it's teaching you control, it's teaching you composure, it's teaching you concentration. There should be a level of effortlessness to when you're juggling the ball, because the more comfortable you can be on the ball, the more that's going to translate into your actual game. Because obviously at no point during a match are you going to be juggling a ball, but you're definitely going to be receiving the ball out of the air and taking it down to try and control it as quickly and efficiently as possible. And I feel like the skills and composure and the things that you learn through just simple juggling for extended periods of time really does translate extremely well into improving your touch, improving your control, and just being a better overall player. Practice juggling until you get to a point where juggling is no big deal at all. In other words, you can juggle for as long as you want to. Once you get to that point, trust me when I say your game will improve tremendously. I think more than ever, skills and being a flashy player in general is something that very much appeals to younger players. And when I was a kid, I had my Ronaldinho phase where I wanted to do unnecessary stepovers and no-look passes and things that ultimately I pulled off from time to time, but weren't entirely necessary and weren't necessarily my strong suit either. Which leads me into my next piece of advice, which is to recognize what you're good at and really do that thing well. And this is not me saying that you should focus in on the one thing that you're good at and ignore everything else, because that's the last thing you should be doing. If you're trying to improve as an overall footballer, you should always be working on everything, but I think there needs to be a little bit of self-reflection, especially as you get to the age of 15 or 16, where you have a pretty good idea of the type of player that you're going to be moving forward. At least I think for most people, where if you're not a fast player, stop trying to dribble down the wing. If you're not a good finisher, stop trying to be the striker. If you're not a good defender, stop trying to be the center back. You get what I'm saying here? I feel like I've caught myself doing this so many times over the years, because I think you get this idea of what you ideally would like to be like in your mind based on players that you like to watch or whatever the reason may be. But there comes a certain point where I think you have to be realistic where, hey, I'm good at X, Y, and Z. I need to stick to these things, do them as well as I possibly can. And I think as long as I'm doing that, it's going to result in me being a better player overall. You have to recognize that football is a team sport where every single position is designed to do a certain role. And while absolutely one player can be the difference maker, the way for that player to make the difference is by the team collectively doing their part, playing their roles to the best of their abilities. And I think that there's a lot of players these days who kind of have this chip on their shoulder, I'm going to prove everybody wrong mentality, which is totally fine. But at the same time, you have to recognize that you should be doing things that you're good at and not constantly trying to prove everybody wrong and do something that you're not that good at just to show that you can eventually be successful at that thing. I'm confident in saying that 100% of the people watching this video have played on a team where there's a free kick opportunity and the guy who is the worst player on the pitch to take that free kick insists on taking it, because they think they're going to score when everybody else on the field knows they're not. It's an extreme example, but I think you know what I'm saying. If you're playing a role, you should do so to the best of your abilities by playing to your strengths. I think something that a lot of people seek out as far as advice is concerned is how to impress a coach when trying out for a new team. And I think the wrong approach that a lot of people have is going in there and actually trying to impress a coach by doing absolutely everything. But trust me when I say that you are going to look much better as a player, and you're going to play much better as a player by playing to your one or two strengths and doing those things extremely well versus being very mediocre at seemingly trying to do everything. It's a little bit of self-reflection. Every player and every athlete is going to be a little bit different, and not to compare real life to video games, but there's a reason why nobody has 99 overall stats on their entire FIFA card. The fourth piece of advice is something that I'm sure somebody has already said I'm doing too much of down below in the comments, and that is talking. Communication in a team sport is absolutely critical. You need to communicate to be not only better as a team, but also to be better as a player. I can't tell you how many players I have played with that yell at me for not giving them the ball when they never called for the ball. I don't know that you want the ball. I might not even look up to see you unless you call for it, depending on the circumstances. So communication is not only going to benefit yourself, it's going to benefit other players as well. And I'm not just talking about calling for the ball. Like we talked about when it comes to spatial awareness, it's all about information. So as much information that you can give your teammates by way of communication, because you have a different perspective standing from your spot on the pitch versus them, that's going to help the team out as a whole to make the best possible decision as often as possible. Telling a guy he has a man on his back, telling him which way to turn, telling him there's pressure to pass the ball back, calling for the ball, calling off the ball, whatever it may be, any form of communication is going to be helpful. And I see this a lot with younger kids. I was a pretty shy kid myself, and I didn't really like to talk all that much. But when it came to a match, the older I got, the more I realized no one's going to judge me for talking during a match. So now I find myself, when I play too much football, I end up losing my voice because I'm constantly talking. It's such an important skill. It's such an important thing that so many people just don't do. And it makes the biggest difference, not just for yourself, but for your entire team. And the final piece of advice that I have is very general, but I think that it's super important, and looking back, it's something that I really wish I did when growing up, and that is any form, literally any form of strength training. Being a better athlete is going to help you with any sport, not just football, but I think that for me growing up, because I was always one of the quicker players, it's never something that I felt was super important for me to focus on. I really put all of my efforts in terms of any kind of training to improve physical performance towards running, like being in the best shape possible from a conditioning and endurance standpoint, which I think that there were not all years, but a number of years where I felt like I was in really, really good shape. But even just doing that little bit of strength training, knowing what I know now, I think would have made a tremendous difference in terms of not only just overall strength, but explosiveness and general speed. I see so many people that want to get faster, and you're just not going to get faster by not strength training. Doing even the littlest amount once a week over the course of a couple months, it's going to make a really big difference if you've never done anything like that before. Obviously, this channel is very much focused around the performance and feel of football boots. And while there are objective reasons why one football boot might be better than the next, if you're truly looking to improve your overall performance as a footballer, training yourself as an athlete is going to have a much bigger impact versus buying the latest Nikes. And I'm not going to go into specifics here because there's a million things you could do in regards to strength training, and maybe I can go over some of those things in more detail in a future video if that's something that you guys would like to see. But I guess if you're just looking for somewhere to start, some very basic information, I would really focus on squats. I would really focus on maybe doing some push-ups and definitely some pull-ups. Do those 3 exercises consistently over the course of a couple months, and you will notice a significant difference in your athletic ability. And that, ladies and gentlemen, are my 5 tips to become a better footballer pretty much instantly. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, be sure to support it with a like. And if you have any questions regarding anything that I talked about, or would just like to see more of content like this, please let me know down below in the comment section, and I'll do my best to get an answer out to you. If you aren't subscribed to the channel already, make sure you hit that subscribe button along with the little bell notification so you get notified when the next new video goes live. You can find all my social media information linked down below in the description as well. And other than that, guys, thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.